Muy buenas tardes a todos.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I want to thank you for attending this meeting and the Inter-American Bank of Development because today we have the opportunity to show you our project from the Republic of Panama. We want to extend our greetings to Minister Andrade, the PPP organization. This has been an organization that have executed and has the tenders under the PPP modality. I also want to greet the personnel from the for the secretariat and also the representative of the National Bank who supports who is showing support from the bank through the PPP modality. So I wanted to start with some considerations, taking into account what we have been listening to these days, and also taking into account what you have exteriorized, those who have been before me, showing their portfolios. First, about banks. Second, about the environment permissions or permits. And third, the trusts. So, in regards to the first one, which is very important for the structural projects such as PPP in Panama, we want to highlight that in order to move forward with such a project, pre-feasibility to feasibility, we need the involvement of the Ministry of Economy and Finances with the commitments. So this strengthens the factor that is critical for the banks. We need this pluriannual. We we need the payments to be. We need to be able to see the payments from the MEF. The assets should start working with the commercial operations. So this is something that shows on the webpage of the MEF. And what do we need to do this? We have a restriction which is budget, and because of the constitution, this is set annually. So this is something that we wanted to highlight. The other thing is that we have limits in terms of budget of the PPP that is hiring. We have a 33 limit, 33% limit. And after this, I wanted to talk about something that also strengthens bankability for the co-funded projects that are mandatory from the normative framework. This is the base of the assets of the project, and also about these environment permits. I was listening to the Ministry of Peru here saying that it took him like 8 years to get a permit. So if this is important before the financial closure, the projects that are already part of the PPP portfolio have been structured in such a way that taking into account the scope, the consequences should be based on the good practices guideline. Some other have more complex structures. And the other thing that I wanted to add is that the Secretariat has made an effort that we need to continue working on this. We need to let everyone know that it's important to get the permit because this is part of the portfolio. If this is mandatory because of the legal framework, I mean the promotion and investment, the creation or generation of employment, etc. And we have to make these projects viable. We need interinstitutional cooperation focused on getting the permit on time so the schedules can be set. So we wanted to start with this. Please show the video.
Desde la Secretaría Nacional de Asociaciones Público-Privadas facilitamos el
We
desarrollo de
facilitate
proyectos
the development
estratégicos
of strategic
desarrollando la
projects that
participación del país
promote
como
the
motor
development of
estratégico
the
de inversiones
country.
en la
As a
región.
hub
Panamá
of
ofrece oportunidades
investments,
únicas en el sector
Panama
privado.
offers
Nuestra
great
ubicación privilegiada
opportunities for the private sector. We're committed with the development, and this makes us a reliable destination for investors. We share the vision. While we have better and more alliances, we're going to have better life quality. With this, we guarantee that we're going to have sustainable investments. We're focused on diversifying our portfolio projects, PPP, adapting ourselves to the market. We need to have quality projects with benefits in the long term for the country. We have a great team of experts that are with us during every stage of these projects so that we can guarantee the success of every initiative. Within the portfolio, we there are five structural projects under the PPP modality, and they are part of the regional plan for mobility and logistics that wants to improve mobility and logistics within Latin America, especially for the Pacific corridor. That is why this our country destiny will allocate resources to work on 510 kilometers of roads. We need to be together in order to create a better Panama that is competitive. Today, we mentioned again that we are committed to work on the investments that transform lives. Thank you. Can we continue with the presentation, please? Well, while we wait for the presentation, didn't want to forget this, but one of the Peruvian representatives talked about the prioritization of these projects. And this is something that we discussed previously. These PPP projects have a legal requirement. They have to be included in a strategic planning, including public planning with the social and fiscal responsibility or tax responsibility. That is why it's important to have the prioritization of these projects. So among this, we have projects that were already part of the portfolio, and we are betting on new projects so that we can include services and also to be able to replicate the knowledges to other contractors that are also part of the central government, taking into account that this strengthens the risk perception, considering that these are almost quasi-sovereign. So we have transport initiative, social infrastructure initiative that we want to include. We have a um, municipality project. Panama is very centralized, and we have to strengthen the local governments. We have an energy project, public infrastructure. We're working on this with the Inter-American Development Bank, and also working with the Ministry of Transport. We have initially five projects that are highways. Okay, so the first project that we're going to talk about is the East Pan American Highway. It's in the process of it's in the contractual process. This is a project that has a scope of rehabilitation and maintenance based on standards with 15 years of operation. And as we mentioned before in the media, the MOB is around $282 million. So this project, what we can highlight about this is that it's about to be, it's just because the construction phase. And one thing that we want to highlight, this is one of the projects that were generated under the PPP modality. Um, for this, we understood that we needed this legal framework in which we had this clause for anticipated permit. So, next, please. So for the next one, which is West Pan American Car Highway, we already had that. So I think that we're going to have this answer in the middle of the year. This is a similar project, a standards maintenance project. This is being structured by the bid, and this project has a regional importance since this is useful for the Pacific corridor. It promotes a logistics chain, the complexity, it has over 280,000 beneficiaries, and it generates 3,000 direct employments and 10,000 indirect. So for us, this is a project that has a lot of potential, including a pre-qualification element, and we expect to have this project adjudicated before 2025 finishes. The Centenario Highway is kind of different because it's not just co-financed. It, we saw that at a pre-feasibility level, we have a tolls structure that could contribute with funding the project. Having said this, we have time of 25 years. It has a co-financed modality. We have a trust structure with mandatory character, and it's being structured by the IFC. So this will complement with the regional master plan, which includes the 500,000 kilometers that was mentioned in the video, and it's very important for the Central American region. The the bit north of it corridor, we expect to have this on 2026. It's a project that has a term of 30 years, 20 kilometers, and we're about to decide if this is going to include uh, tolls, shallow tolls component. These are required land permit, and this is monitored by the BCIE, and we expect to start this on 2026. The Panama Highway, we have the cooperation from the CAF and uh, the other projects. This includes an important component, which is strengthening the portfolio for the Ministry of Public Works. With this, we can have a great impact at a logistics level and the connectivity in Central America. This project is at the pre-feasibility level, and we haven't decided if this is going to have a tolls scheme. I think this has the Ministry of Economy and Finances wants to make sure that at the structure level we could include some kind of flows that so so that it contributes to generating flows that make the project more sustainable. This is a project that the Secretariat, taking into account the recommendations from the Minister, and in order to guarantee the sustainability of the portfolio, we're going to be incisive with this. This is in order for the projects to be more sustainable. Thank you. So in regards to the four line of transmission, this is self-financed, and actually we want to highlight two things about it. And also we want to mention two things that have been a challenge for the project. Within the challenges we have that the project has been the consequence of alignment it goes through protected areas, so it's very difficult to get the environmental impact studies that make the structure possible and allow us to know what is the lifespan for this project. Within these modalities, we have a robust regime. Every time we apply the taxes that are applied to the different projects in Panama based on the energy regulations. These are there. We have other projects that are also part of the portfolio that are not exempt of these fees or taxes. There are other projects that are exempted from these taxes as well, but for the PPP projects, Panama doesn't have all this regime set.
Another thing to highlight from the point of view of the project is that it was pretty assertive in structuring the environmental impact assessment and not to delegate to that to the contractor. We think that that is fundamental in terms that the spirit of that was to ensure that being the environmental impact assessment an important precedent condition to the financial granting. That is important. So we applaud it every time we think about the technical advisors, technical assistance. We think that it can be something that can make schedules more viable and to accelerate the financial closure. So the project of Ciudad Judicial or legal city. So this has a structure entity, the IDB. We have received throughout these 9 months of management many financial entities that have mentioned their appetite to finance these social infrastructure projects. So the acceptance of this project from the point of view of banking is pretty good. And then from the point of view of the challenges of the project, which are challenges that we're sure that with the accompanying of the IDB can be worked with no problem. We have the parental risk, the identification of the land is critical to make it viable. And additionally, we need to highlight that the legal entity is not actually an entity that is an executor of civil work. So we need to strengthen the importance that that entity is a PPP robust unit that has the institutional capacity to work as an counterpart of a PPP contractor that is constituted as a control unit. And another aspect that we have identified in a pretty starting phase, and we estimate that in the better interest of the project it's going to have to flow smoothly, is how the budget capacity is measured according to the regulatory framework of that contracting public entity, because what the regulatory framework says is the budget capacity is in function of the term of the project and needs to be measured attending to the investments that have been effectively done, and the legal entity does not carry out investments in a regular way. So that's a gap in the regulation, but we think that in the better interest of the project, we're going to be able to work around it with the support of the IDB. Additionally, one thing to highlight, the inclusion of complementary services that in a way ensure and contribute to ensure the financial sustainability of the project. And another aspect that also for banking we think that is going to be critical is what is banking going to demand, taking in consideration that the operation of the legal entity has a deficit and there needs to be a commitment from the government to generate budget resources in the taxing valid entity, so that when the asset is in function, we ensure the payments to the contractor and the creditors. And now with this, we were going to talk about why we are here trying to update the portfolio and include new initiatives that are going to allow us to standardize the technical knowledge that we already have obtained from the Ministry of Public Works and the co-finance projects to give space to other projects. The first one is the penitentiary centers. We have a deficit of 9,000 people that are no longer free, where we have identified land, so we don't have the land risk, and where the Ministry of the Government would be the contracting the public entity. So we're replicating a co-finance structure, a structure where the risk is of a quasi-sovereign operation, and basically the term that we have studied internally in the Secretariat and in conversations with the Ministry of Government would be of 25 years in the operations and maintenance period. We want to replicate what Uruguay did in the first project of PPP modality. It's a project that cannot be structured unless it's co-financed, but we have also identified complementary services that can actually contribute to have this people that have no freedom anymore, that are being imprisoned, can be re-socialized. So this is an initiative that we hope that by the beginning of next year, maybe by the end of this year, can become real. The educational infrastructure projects are again part of an entity of the central government, and it's a project that actually where the idea came from the private sector to have it studied by the Secretariat. So it's a project that would be co-financed, again quasi-sovereign operation. The structure is a trust with mandatory nature to oversee the assets and liabilities of the project. We have 3,102 educational centers and 380,000 students, so there is a demand. Three aspects that I want to highlight. There's three multilateral entities for financing that have already said they're interested in accompanying us in the structuration of these projects. And the other thing is that Panama, due to legal disposition or legal regulations, they need to provide 5% of the GDP to education. So these are people that know about the civil works, they execute civil works, and they're not going to have any issues in structuring an office for PPPs, and we want to accompany them in trying out a different alternative. Doesn't mean that they're not going to have resources to move these projects forward with works advances, because they do have the budget, but we want to accompany them trying out a different alternative. Now, the project of Parking and Commerces Plaza, this is a municipal project where the municipality of Santiago has to continue to mature the initiative, because it's an initiative that is pretty, well, it's not very well matured yet. However, we have studied it, and it's a project that has the potential to be structured in an self-finance way. It includes a component of parkings and commercial spaces that would be leased, and that would create a flow for the project to be structured in a self-finance way. And we want to bet on empowering those local governments in a way that they can make visible the modality of PPP as something where they can actually strengthen their execution capacity by replicating, in a way, everything that has been done in other jurisdictions. The Airport Isla Colón project is a project that we're trying to promote. The scope hasn't been defined yet, because basically what we need to define is the demand in order to determine if it's going to be a project that is going to include rehabilitation, or is it going to be an expansion. There's an appetite. However, there was a conceptual internal discussion in the Secretariat, taking in consideration that basically what the technical team was saying of the engineers in the project was that if it needed to be in the transportation sector or in logistics sectors. So here we actually had a bit of an exchange here with the Dominican Republic, who are pioneers in this kind of projects. And well, there's different things. First, that the government needs to be involved in supplying basic services if that area is going to have a strategic planning that is aiming for tourism. Because if we don't have basic services, unless the hotel complexes have a component of PETAR, how are we going to make this public services or utilities viable? The project is in a structuring phase, in a pretty starting phase in terms of maturity. The public contracted entity would be the civil aeronautics entity, so we would actually have to see and analyze that budget capability in terms of the investments that have effectively been carried out as the regulation says. And the last project would be the mailing service project in Panama, where we're trying to incorporate a different category that is foreseen in the regulatory framework, which is services. So it's a project that is a challenge. Um, at a level of structuring, we need to look for a structuring party that has experience specifically supplying this kind of logistic services. There's a demand. We are working on the basis that it has the potential of being structured as a self-financed project, but it's still not very mature. We're in the starting phases. So again, we're trying to bet on diversifying the portfolio, incorporating projects of social infrastructure, and basically replicating well lessons learned the levels that were initially structured as co-financed by the Ministry of Public Works. So that finishes the presentation. I don't know if there's any space for questions.